Sure. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome. Good morning, everybody. Thank you. It's almost time. This is so exciting. Thank you. So exciting to be here on a beautiful day here in Aptos, even though I was horribly lost getting here, and it took me forever. Don't trust Siri. She's very unpredictable. A couple of introductions as we're getting going. I am, once again, so excited to be here. My name is Javier Zaldivar, and I am the Director for Consumer Services Cell, which covers this beautiful Santa Cruz County, Monterey County, San Benito County, and South Santa Clara County. And
I guess that means me. I'm Mike Healy, Director of Consumer Services North, and actually the Interim Executive Director, so depending on which hat that I wear. So we want to welcome you here. This is the 19th annual Legislative Breakfast. Can you believe 19 years of doing this? We had a full house today, sold out crowd. We've got a big program for you today. It's a little bit different format than what we've done before, so what we wanted to do in the spirit of bringing everyone together, being a whole community, making every voice matter, we're going to have a panel that's going to talk to you today, taking various questions from folks. Some questions came beforehand, some questions we gathered up, so I think you're really going to like the program. I want to introduce Jessica.
Good morning, everybody. Can I just get a show of hands real quick? I should disclose this now. I drank decaf coffee, and I think it's having the opposite effect. So I was told I only have 2 minutes, but Francisco knows me well enough to know that I'll go for 5. So here we go, because we want to get this party started. How many of you here are clients of San Andreas Regional Center? Raise your hand. Keep them up. How many of you here? Oh, this is awesome. Look at this. Yeah. How many of you here are parents of people being served by the Regional Center? I love it. How many of you here are representing an agency that serves clientele from the Regional Center? Oh my gosh, phenomenal. How many of you here are staff from the Regional Center? It is so important for us to see who's around us, because today we're going to hear some very important information that affects the people that are served by the Regional Center, the families that have people that are served by the Regional Center, the service providers who provide services to people from the Regional Center. We have supervisors to each of our counties that are represented by the Regional Center. But also, as Santi likes to say, we're going to hear issues about what's going on in our great state of California. I was talking to a staff earlier today, and she was mentioning how there is no law like this in any other state. And this is why California is an amazing state to live in. And we should be so proud that our representatives, our legislators, have taken heed to our words and have kept the Lanterman Act, ran with it, and even in the most difficult of times have chosen that even when we have to have budget cuts that hurt us, not taken away the Lanterman Act completely. We are important. Our voice matters. And today, we will hear how we will be able to move forward to keep the Lanterman Act in place, intact, for the next 40 years to come. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 19th Annual Legislative Breakfast. Thank you.
once again, how exciting is it to be here? And as Jessica mentioned, we're at a dawn of a new era. It has been, I want to say 3, 4, 6 years where I've been holding my breath. The promise of the Landsherman Act has been questioned, has been modified, and more importantly, what was the mission of the Landsherman Act? What is it, what the people who helped develop it, what was it they wanted? And what was the road that they were going to put us on to help us achieve it? And over the last few years, I felt, and I just got to hold my breath. I'm not sure what's happening here. One thing we never lost was hope. We knew that hope and that the vision of the future was still very bright, even though we were being questioned, and even though people were saying, what's the value of having this kind of support structure for individuals? And the value is this, coming into a room and realizing that in the end, whether you are a service provider, whether you are a parent, whether you are a regional center staff, or more importantly, an individual who is the recipient of a service, we have the same mission in place. And that is to provide a quality and fulfilling life and really look at what is the value we have, not only here in California, but as Americans, and what is the civil rights that we are hoping to achieve. And the Landsherman Act is an act that is so unique that it must be protected, and having legislators here is a wonderful opportunity to really show that there is value and that it's not just a one-day-a-year event. Every day is an important event, whether you decide to be you go into the store and you see individuals that are serving you, whether you are a provider, either way, we still, and we carry that message of the Landsherman Act, hoping against all hope that it will remain intact. And as I mentioned, for the first time in a very long time, I let my breath out, knowing that DDS is in a new era. There is excitement at DDS, there is new leadership at DDS, and more importantly, somebody who has walked the road, the very difficult road that we've all walked. And a lot of times people in Sacramento, wonderful people, but they are often removed from the day-to-day activity. But having somebody there in the department who has walked the fine walk and has really struggled with us and has succeeded with us, I am so excited, really. And after 19 years, that's a long time, really. But it's not going to be our last one. There's a lot more to come, and there's a lot more to be spoken of. And what we want to do is make sure that we thank everybody here. And as you look around the room, I am excited to know, I don't know if you are a vendor for the most part, a consumer, an individual, a parent. We are people. And people, regardless of where you walk, how you walk, or more importantly, the support you need for walking, we're here to support each other, and we are here to make sure that we each have what we need to live fulfilling, exciting, and more importantly, fulfilled lives. So thank you everybody for coming. It is very exciting, and there's a few people that I want to introduce because it's very important that we recognize people that are here. Mr. Bruce McPherson, our former state senator, current Santa Cruz Board of Supervisors, Bruce McPherson. The next individual we have here today with us, Mr. Zach Friend, who is also on the Santa Cruz Board of Supervisors. Zach. We have Bill Ritz from Senator Canela's office, who represents Monterey, Salinas. Senator Mark Stone. Assemblymember Mark Stone, good work. I can't blame it on Siri this time. Paige Garrison, a staffer for Assemblymember Stone. Oh, sorry, I thought I heard something. And I don't know if you noticed, but we have our breath of fresh air, the new Director of Developmental Services, Santi J. Rogers. A couple of distinguished people that we want to introduce, and their bios are in the brochures for you today. We have Ms. Darcy McCann, who was on our board of directors and is going to be a panel member. Marty Omoto, who is a grade Marty, I'm sorry. Marty, who has worked very hard to support us and really does a great job. So Marty. We have Kristen Jacobson. And we have a wonderful provider who has been serving the Santa Cruz County for many years, John West.
Thank you, Javier. Give it up for Javier. God. I've been working with this guy for 14 years, and I've never heard him say this much. It's passion, man. You're a natural. We got to take you to Sacramento. You just applied and got the job. Welcome, everyone. I'm just going to do a couple of housekeeping things. As you can see, the theme of our legislative breakfast is every voice matters. Every voice, get out and vote. So as you can see, we have a theme here of getting registered to vote. If you haven't registered to vote, this is an election year. The June primaries are coming up. You have 15 days prior to register if you have not registered. We have some fine people from the Santa Cruz County voter registration in the back. They're actually also doing electronic voter registration. So if you haven't registered to vote, now's a chance to get registered electronically. Or we also have cards that you can take with you. It's really important to get your voice heard, and the whole theme of this legislative breakfast is your voice counts. But your vote also counts, but in order for your vote to count, you got to get registered to vote. The other thing I want to talk about is San Andreas. We're in the process of restarting and getting our People Advisory Committee meetings going again. And so on your tables, you might see a form that says San Andreas Regional Center is recruiting consumers to apply to be on the next generation of People Advisory Committees. If you're interested in applying, fill out the application, get it to someone, or mail it to me later. So, we really want to get representation on all 4 counties of our consumers that are being served. The People Advisory Committee plays an important role with our board because somebody does actually sit on our board of directors who represents the People Advisory Committee. And so your voices are heard, and you also have the opportunity to be giving input at our board of directors level. And so right now we're in the process of recruiting. There are a couple of providers here that are actually hosting some PACs. But right now what we're hoping to get is people to get on and apply. Going into the board, we're also in the process of recruiting potential board members. We have some 4 openings. There's information on the tables about our board of directors. If you're interested, you can contact Lourdes. Where's Lourdes Gonzalez? Raise your hand, Lourdes. Don't be shy. She's right there. And she'll let you know what you need to do. We do have openings for parents to be on the board as well as consumers, and so please apply. Again, thank you for being here. We look forward to a great program. It's a little different this year than in past years. We usually had speakers come up, but we really wanted to get engagement, and so the panel will actually give the opportunity for questions to be asked, questions that people want to know what's happening with my services, what's going to happen to future services. And so hopefully the questions that we are able to answer will be some that you all feel strong in your heart. Unfortunately, we can't get to every single question, but you have a card. If you did have a card and you want to ask the panel a question, make sure you get to that real quick. Where's my spec lab people? They're in the back. Those 2 fine people over there will collect your cards, but we need them as soon as possible. With that, thank you very much. It's nice to see Santi back. Santi's been missed. For those of you who don't know Santi, he's a real shy guy, but I talked to him a couple of times, and it's great to hear his voice on the phone, and every now and then get a word in or 2, but Santi's a great guy. In Sacramento, it's funny because he's surrounded by all his staff. It's kind of, you can't even get to the guy anymore, so. But I'm glad you made it, Santi. It's good to see you here, and we hope you'll enjoy the program.
We're going to set up. We're going to take a couple of minutes to set up the panel, and here we go.
Thank you, Francisco, for organizing this great event and for asking me to come down and moderate this really esteemed panel. As Jessica said, both Francisco certainly knows, and obviously Santi remembers, that if you give me a mic, I'm also going to take a few minutes to say something. Sorry. As Javier mentioned, I've been working for the past 7 or 8 years primarily on insurance reform in California. We've managed to pass SB 946, which has gotten insurance coverage for anyone with private insurance that's state regulated in California, which is a really big chunk. It's really important. And then we were able to extend it to CalPERS, which are all the state employees, and we were able to extend it to healthy families. And that was all great. It's in the exchange. That was another success. So we were able to get the treatment covered through the exchange. If you buy a plan through Covered California, autism-related services will be covered through that. We have one really major group that has not been covered yet, and it's a really, really important group. Our citizens and residents of California who have Medi-Cal for their insurance, which is 50% of the children in our state. That is a very, very large portion. They are left out right now, and they cannot get treatment for autism, any treatment. Behavioral treatment is the standard of care. This is something that we must remedy this year. It's for the autism community, it's our absolutely top priority, and we can't take care of only our kids who are rich enough to have insurance. The state has a huge obligation to our most vulnerable citizens, the ones on Medi-Cal. This will save enormous money in the long run. You can save $1 million per child that you treat with early intervention. And it's DDS and the regional centers that will have the responsibility for those individuals when they grow up. And if we don't treat them, the burden that we are placing on our system is going to cripple us. And we need to be cost effective and treat those children now. Federal law requires it. California's out of compliance. 10 states are now covering it. That's our top priority this year, and I really encourage all of you, when you see alerts about it, to listen and follow, because we have to take care of the poor children too. A couple other issues we're also prioritizing: co-pays and deductibles. We had an unintended consequence with SB 946. That 10% of the cost now, because they passed AB 89 in the budget last year, and they transferred the responsibility for copays and deductibles from the regional centers to families. And that's devastating to families. Autism Society of California just did a survey. About 15 to 20% of families have had to reduce the amount of behavior treatment they get or other services that they're getting because they can't afford their copays and deductibles. And it's also fiscally backfired, because 20% of families actually had to drop their regional center member from their health insurance entirely. That's a very devastating decision, that in order to keep treatment for your child, you have to drop them off of your health insurance. And fiscally for the state, instead of paying $1,000 or $2,000 for copays and deductibles, the regional center is on the hook for paying for the entire treatment. They are paying now for $50,000 or $20,000 for behavioral treatment. So fiscally, it's completely backfired, and today it's costing the regional centers far more than if they were paying for the copays and the deductibles without means testing. So that's another thing. We can fix that, and it won't cost us a penny. It will actually save tens of millions of dollars today, because the regional centers are paying for that. My last passion is early start. Everyone knows, and it's going to be one of the questions for the panel, but in 2009 we made devastating cuts to early start. I'm very proud to say all 3 of my children went through early start, and they are all tremendous success stories, and none of them are regional center clients now at our regional center. They don't need services anymore. They are finished with their early, they're finished with intervention. 2 of them don't need any school services either. My little one was found by the regional center, and he had severe CP, and we were very, very lucky. He was caught at 6 months, and he got incredible treatment, and he walks and runs and is a great athlete, and he's not failure to thrive anymore because he got that intervention early on. And when he was diagnosed, the regional center said to me, "We will be here with you for his entire life." And by the age of 3, we were able to say goodbye to them. And the only reason he was there was because my older son was there. But my older son wouldn't qualify under today's eligibility. So my older son wouldn't have been a regional center client, and so the regional center would have never found my little guy. And then both of those two would be lifelong regional center clients at an expense of $2 million a kid over their lifetime. So this is something, the impact on the lives is incredible, and the fiscal savings is incredible. So anyway, I can never not be on my soapbox for just a little bit. Now I'll turn you to the moderator, and I want to today's theme is Every Voice Matters. It's about making your vote count, your voice count. I would love for the panel to address how important is it for the disability community to have a voice in the election process, and why is it important for the disability community to vote in every election, and also feel free to answer how should the community continue to stay engaged in the political process after they vote. Any of those questions, I would love to, who would like to start?
I'll start if it's all right. I'm pretty passionate about a couple things. I'm just going to give you my 2 catchphrases to start with. You got to rev it up and you got to eat it up. You got to register to vote. That's the first thing you got to do. If you're not registered to vote, you can't really complain to me about the problems in the system. You got to be registered to vote. You got to get educated. Hey, I got to get educated about the politicians, what they stand for. I got to get educated about the issue so that you can make an educated decision. And then you got to vote. You just got to go out and physically vote. You got to rev it up, and then you got to eat it up. You got to evaluate how your politicians are doing for you. You got to evaluate what choices they made or what laws were instituted and how they affect you. You got to eat it up, and then you got to act on it. You've got to go to, let's say, the county board of supervisors and sit and listen to them, and then they're going to give you 2 minutes, and you got to talk to them. You have to evaluate everything that is being done, and then you got to tell people. You got to talk to people that you work with. You got to talk with your other consumers, clients, service providers, friends, parents, doesn't matter. If you're not revving it up and you're not eating it up, you're not really doing your part.
I don't know if my mic's on. Marty Yamoto, CD-CAN. The right to vote is, we talk about the Lanterman Act as being the primary right for people with developmental disabilities, but often we forget, and the rest of the country in California forgets, that the right to vote also is important to us. The right to representation in government is important to us, and it's a right, and it's just as important as the Lanterman Act. When my sister became a voting age in 1971 in Monterey, I'm born and raised in Monterey, I remember all the struggles in the civil rights movement and what Martin Luther King did and others to push for the right to vote, which was denied in this country to so many people. And so I realized that my sister had the right to vote, though nobody recognized it in 1971. Without talking to my parents, who were a little bit worried about pushing that issue, I just took her to the local fire station, which was the place you would go to register in those days, and registered her. And I remember the guy there looked at her very carefully and was going to say something, but you know how you kind of push your way into things and just act like you know what you're doing? That's what we did. And so we kind of pushed our way into voting rights. And he took it, and she became a registered voter. Now, she was very proud of that, and through all her life until she passed away, she voted. And I have to admit, there were times when I was trying to persuade her to vote a certain way over the years, like every good person who works in politics. But and she would, Mr. McPherson would know that. However, here's the thing. she knew this was her right, and she pushed back. She would say, Marty, it's none of your business. So I knew when to stop. So actually, in many elections, I'm sure we canceled each other out in terms of our votes, but but the real issue here is the pride she took in voting. And more than that, it was the right that she had, that she exercised. And why is that so important? Is because we got to show ourselves first that we belong to this community. And if we don't do that, if we don't do the things that John was talking about, registering to vote, about participating in the process, about engaging others in our community, then we're not living or exercising those rights, and we're letting someone else make those decisions. And just last, and I'll turn over to Darcy. The power to vote is so important. And Mr. McPherson, when you were Secretary of State, you participated in a CDCAN town hall telemeeting that was dealing on voter rights for people with disabilities. You may or may not remember, it was many years ago. What was important was you participated, and you wanted to actually, to talk with, and we had several county voter registers on the line. And we had hundreds of people with disabilities on the line, and talking about the barriers to voting, including access. And you were very good about trying to clear the path for many people who had problems. And so those are the kinds of things that we need to do, is access issues for voting, but also encouraging people to vote, getting the voter registers to understand that our population, our people matter. And you did that many years ago, sir, so I really appreciate that. And you recognize a person with developmental disabilities who for the very first time voted that year. He had severe disabilities, was frightened to death to vote. He registered but was scared to death. He voted, there was a year when they had 3 elections, and he voted in every one. And he did that, and he passed away. But one of the proudest moments in his life, he had told his parents, was that he voted. And the fact that you recognized him, you mentioned his name, Mr. Lazar actually was his name, and his parents, when they heard that the Secretary of State of California recognized their son and his right to vote, it meant a lot to them. Just as the right to vote meant a lot to him before he passed away. So I thank you for that.
As previously stated by our panelists, everyone has a right to vote, even if you're severely disabled. Have someone help you fill it out. Again, I think our system is definitely changing and really being an advocate for people with disabilities to make it accessible. So there shouldn't be any reason why people with disabilities cannot have their voice heard. We do matter. Even if it's writing a letter or saying, "Hi, I'm Darcy." I don't think people will ever forget my story once they meet me. I gotta keep getting out there and keep doing it, because new people are in the legislature. They cycle in and out, but they never forget stories. They never forget advocates. They never forget anybody. So everybody's voice does matter.
Thank you. I just want to add something that our community, a vote is something that we have in our community and we can exercise. What we don't have is a lot of lobbying firms and a lot of money to go communicate with the legislators. But that's okay because we have our vote. But it's only okay if we use our vote, because that's the power that we have. And we need to hold our legislators accountable. We're very fortunate in this district to have legislators who support our issues. But we need to let all the legislators know that we're going to hold them accountable, and they care about, more than anything, they care about staying in office so that they can serve the community. And so if we use our vote, that's our loudest voice to be able to do that. I wanted to ask you next, if any of you have stories about the importance of one voice. Because I know that in a big room and in a big community, someone might say, well, but will it really make a difference if I make a call? Will it really make a difference if, will what I do matter? And certainly we've talked about the vote, but what about a phone call to your legislator, or driving up to Sacramento for a rally, or whatever, even a phone call that you make to your legislator? I'd love to have people share any stories about the impact that one individual can have.
My story is about a woman who I'll call Jane because her name is Jane. She used to live in Pittsburgh, and she was living what she thought was a substandard life. And the biggest call and choice and vote that she made was that she called her brother and said, "Come get me." And I may tear up, but I met Jane, and she was in a bedroom, in a back bedroom in her brother's house. And her brother said, she doesn't really talk to anybody, she stays in her house. Well, Jane, the only thing that Jane ever said to her brother was, "Come get me," and he went and got her. From that day forward, Jane sort of blossomed. I'm sure some of you know who I'm talking about because you still serve her. She is now just a wonderful, wonderful woman. She has a job. She goes through a program that she likes. She lives independently by herself. Her biggest thing was that she thought it never mattered. And the only person that she could talk to was her brother, because he was the only one left in her family. So that's the one voice that she thought she could access was her brother. They called, and then they called the regional center. The regional center ended up getting her services, and she's a voting member of our society. She is a person who participates in our society, and she's just really a joy to be around. And that's my friend Jane.
I'm gonna, one person connected to other people matter. And I think we need to remember that. So whether we cast a vote, it's connecting to other people in our community that makes a difference. We sometimes think of our history with the Lanterman Act as it began in the 70s or late 60s with the parents who pushed for the civil rights of their children. And they came to Sacramento and they said, "We are here to speak for justice." We think it began there, and it's continued on to where we are now. But we forget the constant struggles that everyone in this room and everyone in the rest of the state, the families, the people with disabilities, the providers, everyone who have struggled year after year to fight barriers. Each of those were individuals who fought those things, and sometimes they linked up with other people. And sometimes we forget that our history also includes where the state of California took steps for the very first time to suspend and end the Lanterman Act in 2003, or took steps to erode eligibility, which denied the chance of opportunity that many of us in this room share for the right to enjoy a full and free life. So we forget sometimes our own history, and we forget that in remembering that history, we have to remember that individuals came together during that time period, including myself, but many in this room, who came together to bring people to Sacramento, voters of California, families, providers, to fight the suspension of the Lanterman Act. One person connected to other people, came to Sacramento, 5,000 people on a December morning, and testified before a hearing, then was chaired by Senator Chesbro. And within 4 days, the governor rescinded his action. One person connected to others can make a difference. And the thing, if you leave today, one of the action items that John was pressing, is that it's not just about you as an individual when you vote. It's you connecting to other people around your table, or connecting with others in your own neighborhoods. The idea of action is connecting to other people. And that's what makes a difference. And that's what we made a difference back in 2003. And I think we can do it again. There's a line from a TV show that goes, "Decisions are made by those who show up." Decisions are also made when people don't show up. And the critical thing for us in this room is, as individuals, when we leave, is when we show up together and bring our voices together.
as everyone already said, your voice matters. Even if it's making a phone call, writing a letter, talking to someone, engaging with another person with a disability, we all matter. There's simple things you can do. Just by going home from this breakfast and making a phone call and saying, this is what is important to me. And it will be documented. It will be, your voice will matter. So when senators or when assembly people are out there voting, things will be tallied, saying, yes, I am in favor of this bill or whatever is being discussed. It doesn't matter if you're new to the process or old to the process, every voice matters.
I have a couple examples of some individuals who, just to show you, a few more examples of, one thing that may seem so small. Well, this actually was a big one. We had the autism hearing in March, and the hearing was on copays and deductibles. It was not on Medi-Cal, but there's always public comment. And there were a group of individuals from Los Angeles, Orange County, who got on a bus and drove 5, 6, 7 hours to Sacramento for their 30 seconds of testimony at the end of that hearing. And they stood up and they said, we're from Orange County, and they had an interpreter because they spoke Spanish, and they said, we love SB 946. The only part we don't love about it is it doesn't affect us. We're in Medi-Cal, please extend these benefits to us. The hearing was on copays and deductibles, but I know that when Senator Steinberg went back to his office, the single most impactful thing the entire day, he's like, wow, what about those people from Orange County who came all the way up here? It was one little group, but it made a huge impact on him. And then another woman, I was talking to Assemblymember Mansour, who is on the budget committee, and he said, I know this issue is important to my constituent because a woman named Rachel, she called me and she said this was important to her. And I know the copays and deductibles is important to my constituents because someone named Jen called me. One person had called on each of those issues, but legislators care about what their constituents think. And one person who makes a connection with them, and they're supportive of those issues now, and they're going to be working with us to try to get them solved this year. So one person, one phone call, one visit to Sacramento, it makes a huge difference. In 2009, early start services were cut, leaving many at-risk children no longer eligible for services. It was one of the most devastating cuts made during the last decade when the DDS cuts were, very, very deep. I would love for, maybe we'll start with you, Darcy, if you could talk about the impact that those cuts had on the at-risk and developmental disability community, on a child's long-term development, and on the family unit.
Okay. For me, when I was way, way younger, I did get lots of early starts, lots of therapy, lots of supports, and I truly believe that the early starts, the early intervention, the therapy, everything I got is a reflection of who I am today. I could not be where I am today if it wasn't for early start, if it wasn't for services that helped me with physical therapy, with occupational therapy, with all kinds of things that motivated me, that challenged me to be the very best that I can be. Services help people thrive in their lives. Early start is critical, crucial. Families cannot do it alone. It is very, very expensive, especially if you have other children. Early start is critical.
It's really hard to, if you think of all the cuts that our community has endured since 2000, to list all the cuts and try to determine which was the most worst to our people, because so many of the cuts harmed so many families, so many supports and services across the state that were devastating. And even now, the barriers have been put up that prevent so many people from accessing services now that others have. Eligibility was narrowed in many other services, not just for developmental services that have shut people out. And so I don't know how you measure all that, how you measure that type of suffering, but certainly, and totally agree with Kristen and Darcy, the cuts to early start was just absolutely reprehensible. How is it that the state of California or any policymaker or advocates could cut services to young children at the point of their life when services and help and intervention can make the greatest difference of all? It's unbelievable. You know, in our role as voters, we often think that it's an easy decision to make to point out that bad decisions are made by bad people. And so people went after the governor, then Arnold Schwarzenegger, a Republican. And people like to think that if you only got rid of that person, then good things would happen. And I always remind people that more often than not, bad things happen that are caused by good people who either vote for those things or by good people who stand by and let it happen. And so our responsibility as voters in this room, and all of us are registered voters, because if you're not, you need to go back to that table back there and listen to what John said. But we all need to be registered voters. We need to participate, and we are responsible. It's not just policymakers in Sacramento who make decisions. On Early Start, they voted to cut eligibility that shut out services for thousands of babies and young children who needed those services. And guess what? Even if we restore those services, which I hope will happen, it's too late for those children. It's too late. And so the challenge to you, that every voice matters, is where's your voice now? Are you registered to vote? Did you vote? Have you talked to your legislators about Early Start and about the impact? Good people can cause bad things to happen if they vote for it, and good people can cause bad things if they stand by and do nothing. And if you stand by, all of us in this room together, we do nothing to restore Early Start, then we are just as much party to that reduction as those who voted for it. So the challenge to you is do something to restore Early Start as voters of California.
Does somebody have the time? Can someone just yell out the time? 10:30. 10:30. Okay, I got 10 more minutes. I needed to know how much more time I had, and I don't have a clock. Thank you. I'd love to, I'm just looking, because I don't have time for all these questions, so I'm just trying to figure out which ones to go for. What is if you could comment on, because there's another issue that's hitting the budget right now, and it's the minimum wage issue, and they're putting caps on, minimum wage has risen, and they're putting caps on, or basically prohibiting overtime. That's in the budget. And I'd love to have the panel comment on the impact that would have, and I'd love to start with Darcy, because it has a really, really big impact on families. I want everyone in the room to know what that would be.
Okay. For me, the minimum wage is such a big issue. I'm a person that matters, and with all these cuts to specific services that I use every day to get out of bed, to live my life, like in-home support services. If If I get any more cuts or people like me, I can't get out of bed. I can't live without services from the regional center or in-home support services. That's how critical and crucial it is. I'm a suicide and crisis counselor. I can't save lives if I can't get out of bed. It's really critical.
If anyone else wants to add, otherwise I can go to another question.
Sure. You know, the minimum wage, it's such a tricky thing in that the first thing I almost always hear about services are like, hey, I need more money for services. Hey, I need more money for services. Hey, I need more money for services. I really want money for services so that I can afford to pay people a livable wage so they can live in Santa Cruz. And to find out what that minimum livable wage is, it seems pretty low. I can understand how it's a tricky tightrope. Hey, if I pay you too much, then we're not going to have this for the money for this over here. Minimum wage is something that you personally may not think it involves you, but it does. You ought to take a look at minimum wage and how it's going to affect your services personally, and let your care provider, let your local legislator know, because you or I may agree or disagree, and I'm all right with that. I'm all right if you disagree on something that I feel passionate about, and I'm all right if I disagree with you, because it's your voice, it's your choice. What I want you to do is to tell me about it. So the minimum wage thing is tricky for me, but I want you to be educated about it and figure out how it's going to affect you, and then tell the people that you need to how it affects you. All right?
I'll be quick. I know we're kind of running short of time, but in terms of individuals who matter, we have a right to expect to be treated with respect, whether you're a person with disabilities, a family member, or a worker. And I think one of the signs of respect is what you're paid, what you're compensated. And I think the state of California needs to recognize, and we need to push as advocates, that they need to recognize that our community, the workers who provide supports and services, deserve to be treated with respect. And that means you pay people a fair wage. That means you recognize that there will be times or a need for overtime, and you fund those things. And I think we can't have people in the legislature or the state government say they recognize the right of Darcy to live in the community, and yet don't provide the funding to allow that to happen. And it's not an impossible contradiction to solve. And I think as voters, we need to remember that, and remember that it's not enough just to be a friend to our community. You have to respect us too.
I just want to ask one question about sort of individual advocacy for someone's individual child or themselves. What is the most common mistake that parents or providers or caregivers or individuals with disability make when they are, advocating for themselves, when they are asking for services? And comment a little bit on what should somebody do when the first time they ask for something they're told no.
Okay, I'll start with the first question, or last question that she just asked. Ask again, keep asking. Because I never say no the first time. I'll find another way to ask. Or maybe I won't ask that same day, but I'll keep asking. And I'll keep figuring out a way to manage what I need to do to get my point across. And yeah, they may say no to me 100 times, but maybe the 101st time, they might be able to compromise. So never say no. Just keep asking. And the first part of the question, I would say, what?
The biggest mistake that individuals, whoever it is, make when they're advocating for services or for something that they need.
By not speaking up for what they truly need. By being embarrassed, by not calling the service coordinator and saying, my child is having difficulties in school, can you help me? Can you work together with the school? Can you help me? Not like doing things alone. We are a community. We all need to come together as one community. No one should be left alone. Everyone matters.
So for me, as a provider, it's been a long education, and I think oftentimes you hear an answer and you think like, oh, well, this is what is available to me. And I gotta tell you, when I hear all the acronyms, it's an IPP, it's an IEP, I think we forget that the I stands for an individual. So if somebody offers you a program, it's an individual program. You should make sure that you're the individual that it works for or represents. Like I can say, hey, here's something you can do, but it might not be something you want to do. As a parent, I don't know how many parents are like, well, this is just what I thought. You know, this is what we were told. Darcy's absolutely right. It's okay if you hear no, as long as you don't accept it. And I really, really got to stress to parents, everybody, don't be part of the problem, be part of the solution. It's easy to walk up and say, this is bugging the crap out of me, this bothers me. If you don't got a solution or just some suggestion to start the solution, then I'm at a standstill. I can give you answers, but they're my answers. They may not work for you. I'm happy to give you the answers. I'm happy to tell you what to do, but they might not work for you. I'm sure they're not going to work for you 100%. So really, just remember that you're an individual, and if you hear a standard answer, kind of go, well, I'm not a standard person. Give me something else, all right? Whether it's from, it doesn't matter whether it's from the regional center, it doesn't matter if it's from the Board of Supervisors. I've been to a Board of Supervisors meeting, and I wanted to make sure that my child could have their Art and Wine Festival fundraiser at a certain place. And you know what? We went down as a group, we talked to the Board of Supervisors, and within 2 days, we got a permit granted, and then the art and music and science program was still funded. So one person can make a difference, and remember, to the world, you might be one person. To one person, you might be the world.
I'll be really quick. I think it's like what I said before, when we're facing a barrier, especially the word no, and you need to be persistent, as Darcy and John said, but connecting to other people when those moments of when you feel overwhelmed by what you're facing is really important. You do that when you're facing policy decisions, or we should do that, or when we're voting. Connect to other people to help us get through that difficult time. In my own family situation with my sister, there was a time period when we thought, or I believed, that we were pushing for services and inclusion for my sister over the years as she was younger, that we were moving up a hill and pushing her and pushing us together. And at some point, as I tell parents and families who totally understand what I'm talking about, you reach the top of the hill or the mountain and you don't even realize you did that. And suddenly in your life, you are now on the other side of that hill or mountain. And now your job as an advocate or as a person with disabilities, and you don't even know your role has changed, is to prevent that person that you care about from going down that hill on the other side until something ends, like it did for my sister. And that struggle is so hard for all of us, whether you're family members or the person receiving the services or the person providing it. And it's so hard when you hear the word no on top of that, and you know that you've now reached the top of that mountain or hill, and you're now going on the other side. And that's when everybody in this room and the community outside this room, the power of our community is that we need to connect to each other. Could we understand each other, what we're going through? And as it's not a Hallmark card line to say we do need to link up with each other for the strength that we need when we hear the word no. And it's not going to be just one day. Darcy, you've heard it so many times in your life, as I've heard it so many times in mine. We need the strength of our community. We need it when we hear the word no, and we need it when someone in Sacramento enacts a policy that says no to our families.
So I think everyone has heard the theme. You matter, your loved one matters, you have the right to ask for what you want, you have the obligation to the community to ask for what you need, And then when you're told no, you ask again. You can be respectful, you can ask why, but you can keep asking and you can be persistent. I'm sure that Darcy was very respectful when she would ask why and when she would ask again. But you deserve it and you matter. I don't know if anyone wants to make any closing comments. Those last comments actually were pretty awesome. But if anyone would like to make any additional closing comments, we have about 30 seconds each and no more.
Great, I'll take the 30 seconds. Hi, my name is John West. I forgot to introduce myself earlier. We keep talking about the Lanterman Act, and I'm in love with the Lanterman Act, and you got to realize the Lanterman Act was put together by like 4 or 5 people in a room, and it made a difference. I want you to go bigger, so just listen for a moment. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That's not just powers, that's just powers. And that's consent of the governed. We're the governed unless you're in the political office. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them, which is us, shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. So that's the Declaration of Independence. So, you know, if we're struggling with the Lanterman Act, and we're going to struggle with it forever, you can go back to the very first one, the Declaration of Independence, and say, hey man, I'm allowed the pursuit of happiness. I'm allowed my life. I'm allowed my liberty. So don't give up on the Lanterman Act, and if for some reason it goes astray, just pull out the Declaration of Independence and start there.
I'll just close with a quote from, I guess we're quoting old documents or people, but I'll quote from Gandhi. When you go and leave this room today, and with the elections coming up, and just remember what Gandhi wrote and said, we must be the change that we want to see in the world. And so, when you leave this room, we will be the change that we want to see in this world. We're not powerless.
We need to make the changes happen. So let's all do it together. We can do it.
Every voice matters. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's give them another round of applause. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kristen. Just to give you an idea, these are individuals who support us in Sacramento. I mean, I've seen them in the hallways of Sacramento. Darcy, we've had to move furniture for Darcy to get into some of these legislative offices. But she has the loudest voice, you know, and if those of you who can join us in Sacramento, Darcy does it, I think you can too. Our next speaker, our distinguished Assemblymember Mark Stone. Come on up, Mark. Mark represents the 29th District. I have to say that San Andreas Regional Center, we're very fortunate. We have amazing legislators in our 4 counties. 5 senators, 7 assembly members, 7 or 6. But there are a few, and I've heard this across the state, we have some of the greatest representation. Senator Monty, great senator, was once a assembly member. Former Senator Brooke McPherson's always been a friend of the regional center. Mark Stone is a great man. Senator Jim Bell in San Jose, great individual. We're very fortunate in our catchment area to have people in Sacramento that support us, and this gentleman right here is one of those individuals. I'll hand this over to you.
Thanks, Francisco. I was on the way in, I was thinking why I was so excited to come here today, and there's a lot of energy in this room, and it seems more crowded than in the past breakfast that I've been to, which is just great. And the reason was something that I think Javier said earlier, and that's hope. And that's hope. The Lanterman Act was designed to give you hope and give you dignity, absolutely. But I'll tell you, you give me hope. You give me hope. Because when I come back to the district and talk to you and see you and work with you, it gives me purpose and it gives me strength and it gives me the ability to talk to my colleagues about these very difficult issues that we're facing here. And as I listened to the panel, I changed several times what I thought I was going to say, and I'd like to give you a little bit about my perspective on some of these issues. My job is to listen to you. My job is to make California the best place possible for all of its people. All of its people. That's what the Lanterman Act does. And the Lanterman Act is changing over time, and that's a good thing. We need to make sure that it's modern, that it addresses the changes and the needs of all the people that it affects, and that's you as well. Your job really is to vote, because it's that vote that you cast. And think about who you're voting for. We're fortunate here in Santa Cruz County that we have a lot of local electeds, first of all, who are there who will listen. And because of that political will that we generate based on your vote, we can do a lot of things. So if you have concerns at the local level, you have Supervisor Friend, Supervisor McPherson, go visit them. But come visit me as well. Up in Sacramento, or while I'm here in the district, please come talk to me. Because your job also, and I'll reflect on some of the things that were said here earlier, when you're talking to a legislator or you're talking to a local elected, what your job really is to make it as absolutely hard as possible for us to say no. Make it hard for us to say no. That's how we make progress. Because when Darcy comes into my office, or Celie, or Toby, or any of you who've come to see me, and you come into my office and we talk about the issues and the changes that policy represents, that is very, very hard to say no. And that's what your job is. And that needs to be spread around the states. I get to chair the Human Services Committee in the Assembly, which hears these issues daily. And we're working hard to make sure that the state is doing its job with respect to licensing and programs, and yes, with respect to budget. And I'll tell you about the minimum wage issue. I voted for it and I'll vote for it again. The minimum wage also represents dignity for a lot of the workers. And I don't want to see us divide on these issues that are really so important. Now, it does have consequences. Absolutely. It has consequences to the services that you get on a day-to-day basis. But we need to understand and hear about those consequences, because it's then also our responsibility to make sure that that one good policy is offset by the resources to make sure that you're not negatively affected by that good policy. That's why we have to continue to work on early start. We know, the research shows that early interventions, early connections for services does many things. Many things. It helps provide much better outcomes for the children that are involved, and it also provides much better outcomes for the families who are involved, who are concerned and who have questions and who are struggling to understand what's happening in their family when a baby comes along who might have a disability. Those are so important to identify early, get the services in place, and help those families, as you all have been helped through the regional centers and through all the other programs. And it does take resources. And since the budget has kind of turned around over the last few years, and we're talking about rainy day funds, which is a good thing, and we're talking about all this, we cannot forget that we have to be investing in our people, in you, and the services that we provide to you. And those investments really pay off in the long run. They are good fiscal investments, but they're also good investments in our communities. And that's the message you can bring to me at the local level and to my colleagues in Sacramento as you roam through the halls and you say, here's the impact of what that decision might be. But if you would say yes, or sometimes say no to the things that are harmful to the Lanterman Act, that's what we do want to know. If you articulate that and you make it hard for us to disagree with you, then we're making progress. And that's the power you have in the vote, and that's the power you have in coming to talk to us. So I'm excited by the conversation that was here, taking all that to heart. I see lobbyists every day up in Sacramento. The best lobbyists on your issues are you. Hands down. The best lobbyists on your issues are you. Come talk to me, come talk to my colleagues, and we'll keep California moving in the right direction, make the investments that matter. And in fact, you matter so much, that we got a bigwig here today. Some real hotshot from Sacramento came down to hang out with you today. I don't know if you know him, but Santi Rogers, ever heard of this guy? We were so excited. Now I had Diana, just after it was announced, I had Diana Dooley, who's the head of Health and Human Services, in my office, and we were talking. We're building relationships between the legislature and the administration, which is a good thing, a very, very good thing. And we were chatting, and she says, "You know Santi?" "Oh yeah, I know Santi." And I was very excited. Part of me was thinking, what were you thinking? Going up to Sacramento. But for you and for me, the best person who can be in Sacramento pitching those issues, building relationships with the legislature, keeping us on track, is Santi Rogers. So it's really cool that he comes back today. And I don't know how many breakfasts I've been to, but I will keep coming back. You give me hope, you give me inspiration. Sometimes I feel like I'm beating my head against the wall in Sacramento. But when I come and talk to you, I know why I'm there. Thank you for giving me that, and thanks. Enjoy the rest of the morning.
When I had my moment up here, I forgot one really important thing. Next Wednesday, I think it's next Wednesday, maybe 2 Wednesdays, the 30th, we are having a big autism awareness rally in Sacramento. We need all of you guys to come up. We're talking about Early Start, we're talking about co-pays, we're talking about Medi-Cal. We're gonna have lots of legislators, we're gonna do legislative visits. If anyone is interested, I'll put like a piece of paper. There's a bus going from the East Bay. We can probably have a stop here. And if you can get enough people, we'll find a way to pay for another bus. So please figure out how to come join us in Sacramento. It'll be a great opportunity to talk directly to more than just your local legislators.
Thank you. And I actually have an email ready to go out. How many of you get my emails? Raise your hand if you get my. How many of you get it twice? Sorry. That's how much I love you, okay? If you didn't read it the first time, you better read it the second time. But I'll send it again. So I'll be sending the information Kristen just mentioned in regards to the rally next week. It's very important. We get it, the masses matter. You just heard from the best advocates you're going to hear from. I'll let Javier introduce our next guest. He's kind of shy, but I'm sure he has something to say.
Oh my goodness. As we're getting ready to conclude our morning, we want to make sure we hit the message home. It's all about you, and really, every voice does matter. And if you haven't remembered, you should go back to Florida and what happened in 2000 when they were saying, it doesn't matter, when in fact every vote did matter. And as we are winding down, I can't thank the representatives enough for being here, listening, and really making us know that we are being heard, and with your great advocacy, great hope is coming. And speaking of great hope, I got to tell you, Mike and I are up and down the state, and Mike and I have colleagues up and down the state, and a few months ago, shockingly, when we found out that Santi was leaving us, I'm like, oh my God, my dad is leaving, what am I going to do? But going on to bigger and better things, there was one word that summed up the new director, and that was excitement. There is excitement in the air, and I am super excited to welcome back Santi J. Rogers, Director of Developmental Services.
No place like home. No place like home. Ready? 1, 2, 3. No place like home. The beauty of being appointed and having so many close friends, I live here, you know that, right? I live in Santa Cruz County. I was born and raised in the great San Joaquin Valley. You heard the mention a few minutes ago, and I thank you a lot, Mark. That was very, very nice. Diana Dooley is from Hanford. How many of you know where Hanford, California is? It's in the Great Valley, the real valley. From that, when she gave me a call on January 4th, right after the new year started. I think it was strategic call. Would you like to come down and meet in the governor's office? Well, some of us were blessed with a long career. This is my 47th year of serving families and people in my own family in California service. Sure, I've been in the governor's office before, and every time I remember, because I am a walking historian kind of guy, those of you who I've bored a lot, that it's a great place. It's kind of run down though. Have you noticed that? No. Because we've been under a lot of duress. But when she asked me to come in, I met with her on the 7th, and a few days later, I got back to her and I said, yes, I'm willing to serve. It's just maybe the right time that I could maybe contribute to serving people that I love and my family loved, and we dedicate ourselves as good Californians. I'm here, like those moms that I met in 1966, 67, to speak for justice. Did you hear what I said? He said it earlier. I got to hear them say that. And they resembled my family's involvement in their own community. They came from that same generation. Some of them were born at the tail end of the 1800s or the early 1900s. They understood implicitly what it meant the difference of having support for your family. Not to supplant your responsibility as a family member. That's insulting. It's absolutely insulting. When you look at the Lanterman Developmental Disability Services Act, then called the Lanterman Act, those moms talked about helping us do more things for our sons and daughters, each of whom were excluded from access to education. Can you believe that? That wasn't 200 years ago. That was not even 100 years ago. That was about 70 years ago, 65 years ago to be exact. What did that mean? And how much courage did it take? Here's a story you did not know. You understand what a door looks like. The doors were shut to them. Luckily, they met this really unassuming personality called Jess Unruh. People in the room are old enough to know who Jess Unruh. Very quiet guy. You would never hear him say anything but really good English words. Mostly how to go there and how to go there. And go there real soon. He was the Speaker of the Assembly. He came from that great generation my parents came from. They valued hard work, and he also understood how to bring people together. Interesting enough, I think Governor Brown's father was governor. Not I think, I know. And we had at one point in time people from the great generation who survived a huge systemic depression and are recovering themselves. Many of them worked very hard to get an education because there wasn't free education. It was not free. It required hard work to access. And what come from that is that he recognized those moms actually came to him first. And he put them with this guy. I couldn't speak in front of Frank Lanterman. My mouth was closed all the time. I was in awe. And I think I was taller than him. I always thought he was taller. And of course he smoked cigars like my grandfather, and they hung out at a place called Posey's. Now you know I know history. People will only see the sign now, but I was inside with asthma and I couldn't breathe, but I know what was going on. They were making agreements. He brought those moms to Frank Lanterman, because Frank Lanterman was one of the most significant Republican leaders of the floor in the Assembly ever. No term limits then. Okay? And then this other attorney was around. I almost blanking on Jerry's last name, Jerry Walde. And then what happened, Jerome Walde, is that they came together to do things that seem to be improbable in the real time now. Work together on what appears to be not a populist issue, just the right thing to do. Just the right thing to do. Imagine that. When I hear myself say these words, I'm only speaking the words that they said in front of the assembly. The mom's voice were crystal clear. Sound like my mother when she was trying to tell me, what the heck are you going to do? Oh, by the way, are you going to get a job? Yes, I always listen. And here comes the word. The word was really consistent. We're here to speak for justice. And now what do you want? We want access for our sons and our daughters that other citizens have. For education and a safe place to work, a home, and the ability to make choices for who their friends are and when they can actually do whatever they want to do. I always talk about that, and others across the nation are talking about it in the present time, which is a good life. You all understand what a good life is. I just said it. A safe place to live. Good work. Work that means something to you. And it's work that others might be doing. Not just special work, good work. And again, the opportunity to have relationships that you choose for your life. The opportunity to be part of your country. The opportunity to be part of your community. And that's why we're talking about speaking with one voice. You heard me, along with that young man in the middle there, and on the Capitol steps, that's north, right? It was the north, because we were so many people, there was not enough room. And you had to go north. And so we were there talking about speaking, we're here to speak for justice, and we're going to speak with one voice. One voice. Never underestimate, my single message, never underestimate the power of one. This is not a church, but the reality is we need to go to church. And that church happens to be a big white building. It's in the Capitol. And you have to be intimate. Now, I'm a director of the Department of Developmental Services for 38 days. I told Mark here that I count up to 60 days. After that, as a retired behaviorist, I'll just let it go. The amazing part is that we really have opportunities here, and we have a lot of unfinished work. Why wouldn't you invest in our future, our children? When those of us, many of us are in the room, who are advocating for early start services, we sold it, and mostly those parents, on the value added that as you put this into these youngsters' life, their lives will be better. Guess what happened? We didn't have a lot of science. We had something I'm asking you to make sure you always take a check on the way out. We had this, and this, and these, and this. And it turned out to be way beyond what we expected. 78% of those kids that went into early start moved out into regular education, and many of them never circled back for any other additional service other than the great services they get from their families. Hooray for all of us. There are many of you in this room. This is not, I'm so happy to see persons under the age of 40, but many of us in California never before have been more 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds, 80-year-olds, and 90-year-olds. Great new data that tell us that, hooray, we're aging. Guess what? It's because of those kind of efforts. People who we serve under this great act have joined those groups. For that, you should applaud. Right now, you have to applaud, you know. Yeah. And here comes my closing comments. What happens when you start to approximate success? What happens when you get to what your mission orientation was? And when you look to your left and you look to your right, we're more alike than different. Regardless of the California syndrome, that many of us want to look younger every 2 minutes. But that aside, that's transitory. That will too pass. And here we have the opportunity. And I think we're optimistic. We have great leadership in California. That's when somebody comes to ask you for a little longer term date, like on the 7th of January, and you say yes, what might this be like? You value them, and when you're asked to serve, you say yes. Those of you who know me know that's exactly what took place. Just that simple. And I really have a great confidence in Diana Dooley, and the kinds of things she has to deal with are extraordinary. Infrastructure repair. That means, got to go look at your foundation. Your pipes are leaking everywhere. What is the most important thing to do next? What's the next important thing? And where are the legacy issues? And then you have a governor, it's hard to describe, and I will not. However, in 1974 and 75, just before he was elected, one of the youngest governors in California, you got to look up, he wasn't the youngest, but the youngest governor, one of the youngest governors in California, he was challenged by some issues, and they were called state institutions. That's what they were called. They were called state hospitals. There were 11 of them. He was in the news almost constantly anyway, and then he was really in the news on that issue. Remember what year that was? And don't tell me if you weren't born then yet, but the realities are. Then he needed to, they were bifurcated. Fancy word means you had a director of administration and a medical director. And his thought was, let's make one director. His promise to all of us who were appointed that new director is that now I know who I can fire. So action, action, action. The realities are that started us in this direction of understanding what good public policy, and who would have guessed that this same man, from a boy, 35, 36 years old, and becomes all kinds of things, including a mayor of a major city. And he enjoyed that by his own words. He said he really liked it, and now I've heard him say that he might do it again. It's pretty kind of fun. Wow, I've always been impressed by Governor Brown, and I'm not stopping right now. The next part of this real story is he chose to be governor again because he had a lot of unfinished business. And a lot of that, you already know about it. It's really interesting to be around so many people that had served with him when we were 20-something, and now serve with them as we approach 70. It's incredible. And he's only 7 years older, so he acts much different than that. Our promise is that we're going to put everything we have in our repertoire. This young lady here, who I never get to meet very much, handed me a question. And I'm told when I'm in front of a group like this at this critical time, never answer this kind of question. And I'm going to read it to you. Can I read this? Oh, okay. Remember, I'm left-handed, and all of you who are, how many of you are left-handed? Any left-handed? Uh-oh, I knew it. I knew there was a cluster of us working everywhere. Does DDS and the legislature support association or regional center agency? It's abbreviated. I don't like reading abbreviations. I just like to tell you what they are. To do away with family participation fees for services from regional centers. Stay tuned, the answer is coming. The important part is we have major, as you heard from Assemblymember Stone, major public policy issues all gathered at the same time. He did an elegant job of trying to put those all in front of us and understand the complexities of it. We are repairing 7 years of horrible, systematic dismantling of public services. As a Californian who can't stand up and say that, you can't have respect for me unless I say that to you. I know that to be true. We've been running around with duct tape trying to repair those things. And duct tape is a short response. Looking at the future relative to children, they are our future. Looking at where people are going to live is a compelling issue. And I know the legislature knows that, and I believe the administration does too. How that all comes out, at one time, you already heard, the governor announced this past week, remember the legislature is out on spring break. Remember, I went to Catholic schools, I call it the other kind of break. They all come back, right? They all come back next week, as you heard. So you know how special it is. We're doing a fix by Caltrans on Highway 50. It's called the X50 Junction, correct? It should be an exciting time next week. Exciting time. Everybody's back. Thousands of people are coming to the Capitol, and remember that, and figure out how to get them all there. And we're going to be addressing these kind of issues. I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic. What we put into the lives of others have said this, absolutely comes back into our own. This room is full of people with big hearts and great minds that know that better than I can ever preach the gospel to you. So be really, 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 really safe. And if I don't see you in Sacramento, I'll be so disappointed. I'll be so disappointed. It is your obligation as good citizens to act that way. Thank you. I love you all. Take care of yourself.
Happy spring. Thank you so much for coming. Exciting to see everybody. Please register to vote. And don't forget, like Santi said, it is your obligation and my obligation. Thank you so much, and see you all very soon.
Hello, Mark Stone. I am honored to speak with you today.
Thanks, Toby. I'm happy to be here. Yeah, I've been in the role now for about a year, so it's new and it's exciting being in Sacramento.
Can you tell me about your event?
Well, this event today was breakfast for the regional center, bringing everybody together, getting folks kind of pumped up on their role of advocacy and voting, and making sure that everybody's voice is heard and heard as one.
Are there going to be budget cuts?
Well, fortunately this year we're starting to reinvest out of the budget, and it's a challenge. The safety net and a lot of programs have been cut over $9 billion, $6 billion over the last few years. So it's a challenge getting some of the programs reinvested in and back on track. But we are fortunately being able to start to have those conversations, and we need to do investments in programs that help people, especially the disability community.
How about the Letterman Act? What does the future look like?
Lanterman Act has been under assault numerous times over the last few years, and some of those assaults continue. It is changing, as it should, as we learn better how to provide services, what our community expects. So I'm hoping that as we do make some changes in the Lanterman Act about how services get delivered, moving it more focused on the communities, keeping people in their homes or near their homes, a part of their community working, those kinds of changes are very beneficial. But we need to protect the rights of all Californians, including and especially those with disabilities.
Do you think there will be positive changes to our services?
I certainly hope so. That's what we're talking about in the budget, that we are reinvesting in services to people in our community. So a lot of us are driving for positive budgetary changes and more effective services, yes.
Thank you for the interview.
Thanks, Toby. It's always great to see you. Good job.
Thanks. Hello, Santi.
Hi, Toby. How you doing?
I'm honored to speak with you today.
It's my honor. You're a good guy. We've known each other for a long time.
Yeah, congratulations on your new job.
Oh, thank you very much. It's really a great opportunity to work not only with everybody who lived in San Andreas Regional Center area, but thousands of other people. Think about that. Thousands and thousands. They're not all like Toby, but you know how that works.
How you been? And how you been?
Well, I'm been really great. Today we just came out of a real great legislative breakfast, and then you want to shoot that still? We just came out of a legislative breakfast, and there were a lot of people here. They heard some great speeches, and really that kind of symbolizes the cool things that we hope we're going to be able to do in the Department of Developmental Services in Sacramento.
Can you tell me about your new job?
Sure. As you know, I'm the Director of Developmental Services, and we serve all of California, the 4 state developmental centers and 1 state operated program, and the 21 regional centers. our major offices in Sacramento. And it's my pleasure now, after my 47 years, to finally get a job. That's a joke.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, that's all right.
What ecologies are our services facing? Are there going to be budget cuts?
Well, first thing we want to look at is the positive parts. I think the governor now has spoken very clearly that California for the last 6, almost 7 years now, not when he's been the governor the entire time, has suffered some really huge economic shortfalls, meaning we didn't have enough resources to take care of every one of our Californians' needs. I know you know it, I know all of us know it, and now there's opportunities to help us look at some of those things and figure out how we're going to repair the things that we were unable to fund completely.
How about the Letterman Act? What does its future look like?
And the Lanterman Act is one of the best acts in the United States. Matter of fact, it's the only true civil rights act for persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And when Assemblymember Lanterman and other legislators created this act back in 1960s, the late 1960s, it is a wow. It was by itself the only one like it. It promises people access to a full service that best meets their individual needs. And I think the Lanterman Act, its spirit, is still being supported by this legislature. And of course, as I've already said, really we're short on some resources, and now we'll be looking at ways to better improve things.
Do you think there will be positive changes to our services?
I believe when we all work together, there will be always better improvement in our services. I think people are energized throughout California to do their best because we have gone through a real cold fiscal winter. And so now we have to be prudent. That means we don't have a whole lot of money, but we do want to focus on where we need to do first things first.
Thank you for the interview.
That's always great.